Hi, welcome to Up Your Nerd Cred. Did you used to know everything that was happening in the Marvel and DC universes? Did finding out that some superheroes are from Marvel and some are from DC blow your mind? Has keeping track of everything that's been happening there and then realizing that we're only talking about the comics universe and not the cinematic ones, and that all these different universes with all of their own multiversal crises have gotten a little bit out of hand? Well, don't worry. Up Your Nerd Cred is here to talk about the gods cosplaying as men, the men cosplaying as gods, and how much the cinematic universes are really leaving out. At the end of each episode, you'll hopefully know a little bit more than you did and can up your nerd cred. I'm your casual nerd host, CiCi. I went to go check on the peppers in the backyard that I was really excited to tell you about the other day, and I got 2 or 3 mosquito bites in the 2 minutes that I was out there. I got one in the face, a couple on the wrist. I do not love that I have delicious blood in general, because they always seem to find me. But also, I think my pepper plant is growing like a second pepper, and so I'm really excited because I also think that the other one might be possibly making progress, so I want to see what happens. But I can't, go outside without getting eaten alive, so that's kind of annoying. Which I guess makes sense, I'm going to go eat the peppers, I suppose, circle of life or something like that. Yeah, so ordinarily I would be stopped by AM at that point, but as you can guess, it's a shared custody week with Wanda. So what we're going to focus on this week is going to be more of the kind of nerd cred that you're going to want to have, even as a casual. We'll have our expert back for the deep dive next week. But in the interim, our first question is always going to be, what are we nerding out about this week? Now, as an ever-present reminder, listeners, you can nerd out about all kinds of things. It doesn't just have to be heroes and villains, okay? Social media had a practice run for a specific event this last weekend. The last day to wear white has come and gone. That is, if you adhere to what Serial Mom says. As of September 5th, we have about 3 seconds before the pumpkin spice latte discourse gets really and truly fired up. So, what are we nerding out about this week? Well, I'm going to take a minute to sing the praises of drop-off laundry, okay? My kid, wonderful child that he is at a stage where the willingness to play alone hasn't quite developed yet, despite being an only child, which, it's super cute, but it also means that at any given time, if he is awake, I can spend about 1.7 seconds in any given room before a little ball of hype crashes into me to drag me to the next room, which is very awkward when I am trying to use the restroom. Very, very awkward. Anyway, I know that I'm over here waxing poetic about toddler things again, but look, I'm mostly putting you on game about 3 seconds after I've been put on it, so just feel free to drop other ways for me to extend my time with my kid and manage the Red Queen's race of keeping anything clean, because I can't go and do laundry if he won't let me move, and I have to carry him and the laundry and the detergent. There's only so much that I can do. I unfortunately only have 2 hands. Oh well. We'll be back in just a moment to talk about some of the remarkably old people running around in both the DC and the Marvel universes. Welcome back. So, one of the things that I've been thinking about is how really old some of the characters that we actually are running across truly are. There's a number of them that, sure, it seems like they're a little bit older than one might think by virtue of the fact of where it is that they come from. But some of them are just really, really old. There's 10 generations old, and then there's however long Apocalypse is. You know what? Let's cycle back. So, I'm going to go through not quite 15 people that I have a list of, right? And I'm going to give you their code name, their legal name, who they're created by, where they debuted, and then we're going to also talk about when it is that we're first finding out how old these people are. Because there are some very, very old people in both the DC and Marvelverse, and it's kind of wild to think about how many events that they theoretically could have been around for. So let's start with somebody that we referenced previously, Martian Manhunter, okay? His legal name is John Johns, and there are apostrophes between the J and the O's, okay? Get it right. He was created by Joseph Samachan and Joe Certa, and was first seen in Detective Comics number 225, and that actually debuted in 1955. It's about 70 years of Martian Manhunter, as far as we've been concerned. Now, in 1988, Martian Manhunter Volume number 2, they actually discussed the part where, he's actually been born centuries before there was contact with Earth. And so it's generally understood to be about 200 to 300 years old. I mean, honestly, I think this poor guy is really ignored by all of the Justice League merch. It's because he's green, isn't it? See, people always say they don't care if you're black, white, or purple, but between John and Elphaba, I don't know, maybe Kermit's right. Maybe it ain't easy being green for real. But also, though, I will say that as sad as he is, I'm willing to let you know that he doesn't have the family that he did have on Mars. I need you to know that this guy loves Oreos so much that it is obviously not worth it. Come on, guys. Just because they are a vegan snack does not mean that they actually make up for the family that he's lost. Come on. Get it together. But more than anything, what amuses me with Martian Manhunter is the fact that his main vulnerability is to fire, while being from the planet who rules the main fire sign in the zodiac. It's difficult to be him, I'm sure. So let's cycle through to somebody else who has had a good time pretty much the entire time as far as we know them. Mystique. Now, I believe I have introduced her formally before, but just in case, we're just going to go ahead and put her information out there again. So, her legal name is Raven Darkholm. She was first created by, of course, our favorite, Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum. She first debuted in Miss Marvel number 16, and that was a kind of a cameo kind of thing, so she actually came out for real in, Miss Marvel number 18. And in 1994, X-Men Unlimited number 4, that's when she first mentioned that she'd kind of been active since the late 19th century. And if you're active in the late 19th century, that means she's running around in the latter part of the 1800s. So she's running around in the 1990s talking about the late 1800s. That lady is at least 120 if she's still running around. All right? Although I suppose it's pretty easy to maintain that youthful glow when you're a shapeshifter. But you know what she couldn't shapeshift to? A good mom. Not a good mom. Anyway, that's actually for next week. But what I will say is that, honestly, the more that I learn about this lady, I'm kind of thinking that Henry VIII might be kind of jealous. She got some rings on it. Speaking of rings on it, let's talk about Destiny, aka Irene Adler, who was, of course, created by Chris Claremont and also created in partnership with John Byrne. So Destiny, Irene, first debuted in Uncanny X-Men number 1 from 1981, and in Extreme X-Men number 1 in 2001. That's when she noted that her birth was in the late 19th century. Now, again, I would like to point out, we just specifically said that the late 19th century is the late 1800s. So this lady's also been running around for a bit. Also, when I say that her legal name is Irene Adler, yes, that is very specifically a Sherlock Holmes reference. So when she was in London, she was hanging out with Sherlock Holmes, aka Mystique. And that's actually how Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was inspired, shall we say. So Destiny is actually a precog, and she sat there and did the work to a certain extent to figure out the Should we have assassinated the little mustache guy? Apparently the answer is that a worse evil would have taken place, okay? It seems fake, but okay, sure. She is also Nightcrawler's technical actual mom, okay? And Chris Claremont has worked really, really hard to keep her queer, and she and Mystique were the first female same-sex wedding in Marvel history in 2024. Mazel tov! Alright, so we're gonna keep going, and we're gonna get into like some folks who we know are really, really old. So, as we continue on, we have a few other folks in the Marvelverse. So we have James Howlett, also known as Logan. There was some mishigas going on with his birth father and things of that nature, which is part of the reason why he had the multiple lame situations going on, but his official legal name is James Howlett. He was created by Roy Thomas, Lynn Wayne, and John Romita Sr. We've already mentioned this before, but his actual birth was in late 1880s in Alberta, Canada, and we first were told this in Origins number 2 in 2001. So, fun fact, did you know that the reason that he has a really bad amnesia situation on a regular basis is because of his healing factor? Yeah, so essentially he forgets trauma to a certain extent so that his body stops keeping score, or something along those lines. But what it also means is that whenever someone tries to rewrite his entire universe, his same ding-dang brain decides to heal up and fix things for itself. And, that's how the entire House of M storyline tackled. Makes sense. It's actually really funny too, but there's a storyline in which Dracula tries to do a blood transfusion to try to make himself a daywalker, right? Jimmy Boy was not too happy about that. And it's not really a Wolverine storyline if he does not, in fact, claw his way to freedom. Wolverine. Why is he not explicitly in a relationship with Scott and Jean? We talked about that in episode 2 already. I feel like we can probably just go ahead and keep that pushing. So, continuing on from there, we have, Wolverine's kind of counterpart, Victor Creed. As always, he was created by Chris Claremont and in partnership with John Byrne. And Sabretooth first debuted in Iron Fist number 14 in 1977, and in Wolverine Volume 2, number 10, that came out in 1989. That's when we are first introduced to the premise that Victor Creed, aka Sabretooth, was already an adult when Logan was a child. And if you recall, again, Logan born late 1800s. So if Sabretooth is already an adult, wow. As an aside, this guy is 100% the poster child for hurt people, and he tried to break up Wolverine and his girlfriend Silver Fox by trying to kill her. Was not successful, but that's a bit of a thing. Also, dated Mystique in shapeshifty disguise thing, and Mystique, that fertile myrtle that she is, had a kid with him. But somehow, despite being the child of Mystique and Sabretooth, the kid ended up as some kind of weird normie and actually grew up to be an anti-mutant activist. Great and Creed. So that's cool. Also, side note, it turns out that while most of us, generally speaking, are considered to have descended from great apes, he and Logan somehow descended from wolves. So, that's cool. Alright, so we're gonna get much older now. The canon is a little bit varying on how old specifically Wonder Woman is, but she can easily stretch from about 200 to 500 years old, depending on whatever the canon says about her, okay? So, her legal name is Princess Diana of Themyscira. She was created by William Moulton Marston and H.G. Peter, although realistically speaking, if you watch Dr. Marston and the Wonder Woman, you will understand a lot more about this character than her initial debut in All-Star Comics number 8 in 1941. And in the Justice League War in 2014, like it was an animated one, she mentioned that she was centuries old, and that is not something that's really quick. Also, fun fact, she actually has a twin sister, Nubia, who occasionally has taken up the mantle of Wonder Woman, and Nubia is exactly what you would think. She is very black. She has very unambiguously black features, and she has the exact same powers and power level as Diana. Diana just happened to win the competition to go out and be a part of Man's World. Also, to a certain extent, if you think about how much Diana has really gone through, as far as like, she has started out as being kind of a World War II character and has continued on straight through. Realistically speaking, there's a whole lot about Wonder Woman that is going to require her to have a 2-episode situation going on, not dissimilar to Scarlet Witch. Not because she has the same problems as Scarlet Witch per se, but there is a lot of history going on when you were formed by the Olympian gods, you know? So, moving on, we are going to talk about our favorite god of mischief, Loki, whose legal name is Loki Laufeyson, because as you remember, he is Norse, and the Norse use patronymics for their last names. He is technically the son of Laufey, as you can guess, even though he was raised by Odin. So it's really actually a nice reclamation of his true parentage. But that's not what matters. So he was, of course, created by Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, and Jack Kirby. And we first saw him in Journey into Mystery number 85 in 1962. Really, in Thor the Dark World is when we're like first hearing about how like the Asgardians are, to a certain extent, the ones that we are really talking about, discussing typically are over 1,000 years old. And I will say that there's a bunch of Norse lore that we don't really know whether or not is like true about this Loki, but I am pretty sure that Odin's horse in the MCU has 8 legs, and so that means that Loki, you know what, we're not going to talk about it. What we're going to talk about is that it's kind of wild. Again, the Laufeyson part of it is, you know, Loki is actually technically a frost giant, and so it's worth noting that like there's transracial adoptions when somebody adopts a child of a completely different race than they are. But this was a full trans realm adoption. Jotunheim and Asgard are 2 of the 9 realms, okay? At least when adoptions hopped in here, all of us are from Midgard. Presumably all of us are actually from Earth, but I'm not sure if Midgard is like our whole planet specifically or the rest of it. I don't know. I didn't actually do Norse mythology like that. I was a Greek girl. But what I will say is that I'd low-key like to shout out his commitment to the bit, okay? Marvel Loki has maintained horns as part of his wardrobe like the whole time, okay? I mean, even Thor turns Mjolnir into a walking stick when he's in human form. Also, actually, speaking of Thor, so again, his legal name is Thor Odinson, because again, the patronymic thing that we have in like Norse culture, and Thor is the legitimate son of Odin, so he's Thor Odinson. So he was created by, as you can guess, Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, Jack Kirby. He came out in Journey into Mystery number 83, 1962, a little bit before his brother came out, not by much. But in the Thor Ragnarok preludes in 2017, they actually like specifically said that he was like 1,500 years old. So again, Asgardians, their aging span is much different than what our aging span is. And so even though both Thor and Loki, I guess the Jotunheim and the Asgardian aging is much different than that of humans in Midgard, but they're both, you know, over 1,000 years old. Thor's, you know, 1,500 years old. They are quite old. Also, I will say that big ups to Thor because he has maintained his position as an original Avenger. And I mean like original, okay? I'm talking about when Iron Man was still a dude in a big old iron lung looking thing, okay? Also, Beta Ray Bill, a warrior alien, had bested Thor in battle one time, and apparently this is such a big damn deal that Odin created a whole new hammer for Bill, known as Stormbreaker. And Thor himself did lose the ability to wield Mjolnir a couple of times. And I'm just saying, like, people may have been cranky about Natalie Portman Thor, but she was actually really comic accurate. She is considered worthy to wield Mjolnir and is able to wield the power of Mjolnir and Thor and, serves as Thor, but the cancer in her body does eventually overtake her, and, we miss you, Jane, or at least Thor misses you. So we're gonna not be so sad right this second, and we're gonna move on to Etrigan the Demon, or Jason Blood. Jason Blood is the host. Etrigan is the demon, and fun fact, they were actually bonded during King Arthur's reign around the 6th century, so they're also about 1500 years old, and also he was not actually born as Jason Blood, as you can kind of guess, because he's 1500 years old and it's a different name. Incidentally though, Etrigan is a DC hero, but he was created by Jack Kirby. As you'll recall, Jack Kirby did leave Marvel after a bit. There was some disagreements and things of that nature. So Etrigan the Demon first showed up in The Demon #1 in 1972, and like I said, he was bonded to a knight during King Arthur's reign. So now originally he's just a demon bound to a knight of Camelot, but most people know him for his rhyme scheme talking. My speech is regular, does it not? I'm not sure this counts as a fancy thing. So it's also worth noting that the demon side of him is, well, not necessarily upset by the damage he receives whenever he's fighting. He is a bit of a fan, actually. And if you consider the fact that he can actually kind of fight Wonder Woman and Superman and those like that, I imagine that there is a certain point which fighting him actually starts to move into some really, really interesting consent discussions. Well, cycling back into a slightly less weird space, his half-brother is actually Merlin, which would be cool if not for the fact that, like, everyone knows who Merlin is, but you forgot that Etrigan was bonded to Jason Blood even during this short discussion of him, didn't you? So let's continue in the DC vein and go into someone who's probably 600 years or so, probably also over a millennium. Don't actually know. That would be Ra's al Ghul, whose legal name is Ra's al Ghul. He was created by Dennis O'Neil and Neil Adams, two different names there, and debuted in Batman #232 in 1971. And so, yes, he is also, to a certain extent, related to Bruce in the form of he is Bruce's son's grandfather, so that's fun. It's also really interesting overall that he keeps wanting to kill like vast swaths of humanity, and yet he gets into the Lazarus pits when he's got a bit too much of a tummy ache. Don't tell AM I said that. So yeah, he's Damian Wayne's grandfather, and I want to make sure that we're on the same page here, that when I say there are no ethical billionaires, right? No ethical billionaires. But the Wayne / Bat family, half of his bloodline, are the socially minded ones and the ones who instilled a version of morals in him, if that gives you any kind of indication. Also, interestingly, Ra's al Ghul is so old that he doesn't actually know if he counts as a person of color. And that's partly because he doesn't always remember how old he was, or the specifics of what was going on politically when he was a child, or when he was an adult, or 600 years ago. So, if we're going to be talking about, like, some old folks, like, we're going to have to keep going, keep going back, okay? So we've got in the Marvelverse, we've got Insabanur, aka Apocalypse. Now, this character was created by Louise Simonson and Jackson Guise and debuted in X Factor number 5 in 1986. Now, in Rise of Apocalypse number 1, that came out in 96, we first discovered that he was born in Aqaba, Egypt, at about 3000 BCE. So he's actually one of the world's first mutants overall. So one of their earliest Homo sapiens superior. It's gotta come from somewhere, right? So this is where we get our first kind of quirk towards that X gene. I am also going to entirely pretend that Oscar Isaac has only portrayed the trio, I suppose, in all four of them in Moon Knight. And it is very easy to do because AM told me that X-Men Apocalypse wasn't actually worth my time. And I've never actually seen it because he said that it wasn't worth my time. Fun fact though, apparently Apocalypse, this guy, has worked with Imhotep and either Khonshu or his first Moon Knight kind of avatar champion back in the day. As you can tell, obviously, he can't be Apocalypse because then he would have been Khonshu's avatar, and that doesn't make sense. Exactly, right? We do not talk about X-Men Apocalypse. What we do talk about, though, is Queen Hippolyta of Themyscira. So we're bouncing back to DC, and she was created, of course, by William Moulton Marston and H.G. Peter. She first debuted in All-Star Comics number 8 in 1941, and she was, there at the founding of the Amazons in general. So this is thousands of years ago. And now, am I low-key highlighting Diana and Nubia and Hippolyta of Themyscira so that when I occasionally use my given name, which is Kira, spelled the same way that Kira is in Themyscira is, so that people stop calling me Sarah? Shh. I'm being very sneaky about this. Cycling back though to Hippolyta, she works really, really hard to keep any man from setting foot on Themyscira. Now, originally it was because it would cost all of the Amazons their powers, but later on, the rules got tweaked, but mostly it was just focused on keeping it from becoming kind of like a refuge, like keeping it as a refuge from men. She has actually picked up the Wonder Woman mantle several times herself, but each of those times are because Diana has died, and realistically speaking, it's probably for the best that Hippolyta does not maintain this mantle very frequently, because it is not a good situation at all. So moving into somebody else, though, who has some deity special powers to a certain extent, we're talking about the wizard Shazam. Now, talking about, Mamaragan the Wizard, as created by CiCi Beck and Bill Parker. He debuted in Wiz Comics number 2 in 1940. And now, so we're, this specific wizard, not Billy Baston. This wizard has actually guarded the magic that he had guarded since Egypt, okay? Literally thousands of years old, okay? So, yes, Zachary Levi's Shazam and the Brock's Black Adam have kind of given Shazam himself a weak reputation. But again, this is not Billy Baston. This guy has nothing to do with Billy Baston. He has all sorts of powers and things. He is actually very, very cool, okay? Put it to you this way, okay? This guy is technically on the Reality Warper level, right? Reality Warper. But the powers that he has overall, fully designed. Honestly, I do not understand why these gods in DC keep trying to cosplay as men. I really don't, but whatever. But what's really cool is that the original name of the wizard Shazam has been revealed as, according to Wikipedia, as Maunargan. And now what's really cool is that in Australian Aboriginal mythology, they are a lightning ancestral being who speaks with thunder as his voice. He rides a storm cloud, throws lightning bolts to humans and trees, and lives in a billabong. So the fact that Shazam has a name of a lightning being as his real name, I think that's pretty cool. I think it makes a lot of sense. So We are going to take a brief pause though, and we will be back to up your nerd cred. Hi, welcome back to Up Your Nerd Cred, the thrilling conclusion. It's time for the debuts and premieres and anniversaries. Oh my! So, as we go back to some of the things that have happened over the course of the week that are coming up, we have the original Doctor Strange TV movie that came out September 6, 1978. So, if you don't want to have all Benedict Cumberbatch in your life, you do have other options for Doctor Strange. I don't know if I'd recommend it, but you do have other options. We also have coming up Helena Wayne, the Huntress, and this is to clarify, this is the pre-crisis version, but her birthday is September 7th, so happy birthday! Yay! Continuing on. So in Fantastic Four, number 57, in September 8th, 1966, Dr. Doom stole the Silver Surfer's cosmic power. Dr. Doom is a very, very special boy, and he's also going to get a whole deep dive, okay? Just so we all know. Now, if you'll recall, in our Captain America episode, we talked about the time that he became Nomad. In Captain America 180 by Steve Englehart and Sal Buscema, in September 10th, 1974. This is when Steve Rogers is just like, you know what? Nomad. So, yeah. In a more modern time frame, if you are really sad that now that we are in September, we're still at least 5 months away from Black History Month, you can actually sit there and spend some time on the 9th and watch Seen and Heard, the history of Black television. It's coming out on HBO, and it's actually going to be talking about the history of Black representation in Hollywood, showcase a bunch of the creators and the artists who shaped it. So, yay! Nerd cred takes time to build. But if you can manage to still be the kind of mutant that lives for centuries, you gotta develop time travel powers to come back and tell me when it is they confirm white holes. Side note, leave a comment below if you want us to nerd out about astrophysics or astrology or any of the other things that are out there. Now it's time for us to mention that we have an Instagram at Up Your Nerd Cred Pod. We are on Apple, we are on Spotify, we are on YouTube, and we are working on expanding our reach. So, if you have a burning question that you would like us to discuss, you can up your nerd cred. Make sure you like and subscribe, leave comments, and if we pick your question, we'll shout you out at the discussion segment. Also, please make sure to get your friends to also like and subscribe to the pod, and your family, and your coworkers you trust not to be weird about listening to the same podcast as you. And this is where AM usually says, good night, everybody.